Have you ever trusted someone with everything you had, your time, your sweat, your whole heart, and then watched them smile at you like everything was fine, right before the world fell apart? Because that is exactly what happened to me. And by the time I finish this story, you're going to look at the people closest to you a little differently. Welcome back to Daddy's Revenge. Get comfortable, grab something to drink, and pay very close attention, because the people in these stories always had a choice. They just made the wrong one. Drop a comment below and make sure you subscribe. You're going to want to be here for this. My name is Calvin Briggs. I'm 47 years old. I live in a big house in Austin, Texas. I built a construction company from the ground up, starting with just me, one truck, and a used toolbox that squeaked when you opened it. I coach my daughter's soccer team on Sunday mornings. I always hold the door open. I call my mama every Sunday night. And according to 3 different detectives, I try to kill my wife with a glass of water at our own dinner table. Let me bring you all the way back to where this started. It was a Friday in February. February 14th. Actually, yes, Valentine's Day, which I now consider the most suspicious holiday on the calendar. But back then, I woke up that morning feeling like the version of myself I had always promised I would become someday. See, 2 years before that day, I had entered into a major land development deal with a group of investors out of Dallas. Big project, huge risk, the kind of thing that could either make your whole future or take everything you had ever built. The deal had finally closed. The final payment had come through the night before. $100 million. I sat on the edge of my bed at 6 in the morning, phone in my hand, reading that number on my bank screen like it was written in a foreign language I was still learning. My wife, Lenora, she walked out of the bathroom in her robe, towel still on her head, looked at me sitting there with my mouth open, and said, "What happened? You look like you saw a ghost." I turned the phone around so she could see the screen. She stared at it for a long moment. She did not scream. She did not jump up and down. Lenora was never that kind of woman. She handed my phone back to me very slowly, sat down next to me on the bed, and put her head on my shoulder. "We did it," she said quietly. Just that. We did it. And in that moment, I believed that completely. I believed we were a team. I believed she was proud of me. I believed Valentine's Day had never felt more right. What I did not know was that 3 weeks earlier, Lenora had made a phone call that would change everything. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, I need to tell you about a woman named Gloria. Gloria had worked in our home for almost a year. She was in her late 50s, small and quiet, with silver hair always pulled back tight, and reading glasses she kept hanging around her neck on a little beaded chain. She did not talk much. She did not ask questions. She showed up every morning before we were even fully awake, and she moved through that house like she belonged to it. I respected that about her. I trusted her with our home. What I did not know was that Gloria had been watching. Not the way someone watches a television show. The way someone watches a storm gathering on the horizon, waiting to see how bad it gets. She had noticed things I had not noticed, heard things I had not heard, and she had been carrying what she knew in silence for weeks because she did not want to be wrong. She did not want to start a fire in a good man's house if it turned out she was just reading the smoke wrong. That was the kind of woman Gloria was. Careful, deliberate, and completely certain by the time it mattered. Back to Valentine's Day. Lenora suggested we celebrate properly. Not go out to some crowded restaurant where we'd be waiting 2 hours for a table while strangers bumped into our chairs. No, she wanted to do it right at home. Private. Just the 2 of us. She told Gloria to prepare something special. A real meal. And then she told her she could leave early once the food was done. Gloria said okay. She started cooking. And then she did not leave. She stayed in the back part of the house. Quietly. Because something she had seen that afternoon would not let her walk out that front door. The meal was beautiful. Roasted chicken with herbs, pasta that smelled like an Italian grandmother had personally blessed it, candles on the table, soft music from the little speaker in the corner. Lenora had dressed up. I had put on the shirt she always said she liked. It felt like a scene from the kind of life people work their whole lives to get to. I sat across from her, and I remember thinking, this is it. This is what all of it was for. Then she stood up and said she was going to get us some water. She walked into the kitchen. I heard the tap running. She came back holding 2 tall glasses, set mine in front of me, sat down, raised hers with a smile, and said, "To us, Calvin." to everything we built. And I picked up my glass. That is the exact moment Gloria appeared. She came through the side hallway, not the kitchen. The side hallway, which made no sense at all because there was nothing down that hallway she needed. She was carrying a small basket with extra napkins, and as she leaned over to place them on the table, she got very close to my ear. She said 4 words, quiet as a prayer. Switch the glasses. Now. And then she straightened up, smiled at Lenora, and said, I brought extra napkins for you both, in her normal, steady voice. And she walked back toward the hallway. My heart stopped. Lenora was talking. Something about the weekend, about a trip she wanted us to take in the spring. Her glass was halfway to her lips. I did not think. I did not reason through it. I just moved, casual as reaching for a fork. I swapped them. My glass went to her spot. Her glass came to mine. She did not notice. She was laughing at something she had just remembered. She touched my hand across the table. She raised her glass again and said, to us. And she drank. For about 40 seconds, everything was completely normal. Then the color changed in her face. Not dramatic, not like the movies. Just a slowness that crept in behind her eyes. She blinked. She set the glass down. She touched her temple. She said, Calvin, I feel strange. And then her head went down toward the table, and I was already moving toward her before it landed. I called 911. I told them my wife had collapsed. I told them I did not know what had happened. And while I was on the phone, watching the paramedics come through my front door 8 minutes later, I looked across the table at my glass, the one that had been hers, and I realized with the cold clarity of a man who has just stepped off the edge of something that I did not know a single thing about what was really happening in my own house. Lenora was taken to the hospital. Her heart rate was low. She was not in danger of dying, the doctors told me, but she had been given something that should not have been in her drink. The paramedics found traces of a compound in the glass. They called the police, and the police, when they arrived, wanted to know one thing right away. Who poured the water? Lenora had poured it, but she was in the hospital, and I was standing in my dining room holding my phone, and I had just told them I had switched the glasses. So for the next 6 hours, I was the most suspicious man in Austin, Texas, which, I want to be clear, is not a comfortable position to be in when you have just watched your wife collapse at your Valentine's Day dinner table. Detective Anaya was the lead. She was maybe 40, with very still eyes, and the kind of patience that made you feel like every word you said was being put into a file somewhere. She sat across from me in my own living room, and she asked me to walk her through the evening. So I did. I told her about the money, about the deal closing, about the dinner, about Gloria, about the 4 words. She wrote everything down without changing her expression once. When I finished, she closed her notebook and looked at me and said, Mr. Briggs, where is your housekeeper now? I did not know. Gloria had left during the chaos. I had not seen her after the ambulance arrived. I gave Detective Anaya Gloria's phone number and her home address. Anaya nodded and stood up and said, we will be in touch. And she said it in the specific way that means do not go anywhere. That night, I slept in a chair in Lenora's hospital room because I did not want to go back to that house alone. I watched her sleep with wires attached to her arms and machines beeping softly, and I kept asking myself the same question on repeat like a broken record. Why did Gloria warn me? If someone had put something in my glass and Gloria knew about it, that meant one of 2 things. Either Gloria had put it there herself and then changed her mind, or Gloria had seen someone else do it and was protecting me. Both answers scared me, but one of them scared me in a completely different way. A deeper way. The kind of fear that does not come from outside. The kind that comes from looking at the person sleeping in a hospital bed and realizing you may not know them the way you thought you did. The next morning, my lawyer, a sharp woman named Sandra who had handled all my business contract for 6 years, showed up at the hospital before I had even had coffee. She sat down across from me and said, Calvin, the police spoke to me this morning. You're not under arrest, but you're a person of interest. We need to get ahead of this. I told her everything. She listened with that specific stillness good lawyers develop, the one that means they are organizing information in real time. When I finished, she said, we need to find Gloria. Gloria was found that same afternoon. Not hiding, not running. She was sitting in a diner 2 miles from our house, drinking tea, as if she had been waiting for someone to come find her. Detective Anaya brought her in for questioning. I was not in the room, but Sandra had arranged for a second interview, a private one, just to hear what Gloria had to say outside of the official record. Gloria agreed. She came to Sandra's office the following morning. I was there, and I want you to understand what it felt like to sit across from this quiet, silver-haired woman who had worked in my house for a year and wait to hear what she knew. Gloria sat down. She folded her hands on the table. She looked at me steadily and said, "Mr. Briggs, I owe you an explanation and an apology." And then she told me everything. It started about 6 weeks before Valentine's Day. She had been cleaning the home office. My home office. The one with the dark wood desk and the tall bookshelf and the leather chair I never seemed to spend enough time in. She was dusting the shelves when something slid off the edge of a book and fell to the floor. A folded piece of paper. She almost just put it back, but landed open, and the name at the top of the page caught her eye before she could look away. It was a name she recognized. Not mine. Not Lenora's. A man named Derek Cousins. My younger brother. Gloria knew who Derek was because he had visited our house twice in the previous year. Loud, well-dressed, the kind of man who walked into a room and expected it to rearrange itself around him. I love my brother the way you love family. With patience, with history, with the specific tiredness that comes from caring about someone who keeps making it hard. The letter was from Derek to Lenora, and it was not the first one. Gloria told me she found 3 more over the following 2 weeks in places that told her Lenora had been reading and rereading them. A kitchen drawer, inside a cookbook she never cooked from, under a laptop sleeve in the bedroom. All from Derek, all with the same basic message wrapped in different words. He had a claim, a legal claim, against the development company, against the deal I had just closed, against the $100 million sitting in our joint account. See, for years ago, when I was putting together the original investment group for the land deal, Derek had come to me wanting in. He had money at the time, some inheritance from our uncle, and he wanted to be part of it. I let him in for a small percentage. But 18 months later, when the deal started taking longer than expected and the costs were climbing, Derek panicked. He pulled out. He signed paperwork, giving up his stake in exchange for getting his original investment back. Clean, legal, witnessed, his choice. But now, apparently, he had found a lawyer in Houston who believed the original agreement had a flaw. Something about the way the stake transfer was documented, some language in paragraph 9 of a contract nobody had looked at in 3 years. And his position was that the withdrawal was not legally binding, that he still had a claim, that a portion of the $100 million, his lawyers were suggesting 30%, rightfully belonged to him. And he had written to Lenora, not me, to tell her he was prepared to file. Unless. Gloria paused when she got to that part. She looked at her hands. Then she looked back at me. The last letter, she said, the last one she had found. It was different from the others. Shorter. The handwriting was faster, like it was written in a hurry or with emotion. Derek had written that if the deal closed and the money landed before he could file, the cleanest path forward would be if certain records from the original agreement could not be produced. Records that were stored in my home office, in the safe behind the bookshelf. The one only Lenora, and I knew the combination too. I sat very still for a long moment after Gloria said that. Sandra, beside me, was writing. The room was very quiet. So he asked her, I said slowly. He asked her to remove the records. Gloria nodded once. And in the margin of that letter, she said carefully, your wife had written something. Sandra stopped writing. What did she write? Gloria said, 2 words. I will. The silence after that was the loudest thing I had ever heard. I wanted to get up. I wanted to drive to that hospital and stand next to Lenora's bed and ask her to her face. But then I made myself stop, because I needed to think, really think, not react, not assume, think. Lenora had written those words, but Lenora had also been the one who drank the water. If she had known something was wrong with my glass, she never would have touched hers. She would have had a reason, a headache, a sudden switch to wine, something. Instead, she had raised her glass without a single hesitation and said to us and meant it, or at least appeared to mean it, and then collapsed in front of me. That was not the behavior of someone who had poisoned her husband's drink. which meant I said to Gloria and Sandra, if Lenora did not put anything in my glass. I looked at Gloria. She looked back at me. There was something in her face I had not seen there before. Not guilt exactly. Something older and more complicated than guilt. Gloria, I said. She closed her eyes. Open them. I put in your glass, she said. The room did not change. The clock on Sandra's wall kept ticking. You put it in my glass, I repeated. A mild sedative, she said. Something I had at home for sleep. Enough to make you unwell. To slow the evening down. I was going to confront Mrs. Briggs while you rested. I was going to show her that I had found the letters and ask her directly what she was planning. I thought if I could just stop the evening, just pause it somehow, I could protect you. She pressed both hands flat on the table. And then I sat in that hallway and I watched the two of you. You were laughing. You reached across the table and held her hand. And she was looking at you like. She stopped. I could not do it. I thought, what have I done? What am I doing? So I warned you. I told you to switch. I did not know she had a sensitivity to that compound. I would never. Her voice broke at the end. Just slightly. Just enough. I paid for the tea I had not ordered. I drove myself home, and I sat in my kitchen, and I looked at the table where last night's candles were still sitting, burned down to nothing, little pools of wax hardened around the bases. And I thought about all of it. Gloria, who had put something in my drink to stop my wife from doing something she was not even certain my wife was going to do. Lenora, who had written 2 words in a letter's margin that might mean she was planning something terrible, or might mean something else entirely. The next day, I went back to Sandra's office. She had spent the night doing what Sandra did best, pulling at threads. She had gotten a subpoena request started for Lenora's personal email, for her phone records, and for any communication between her and Derek over the last 6 months. In Texas, when there is an active investigation and documented evidence of potential financial conspiracy, you can move fast if you have a good lawyer and a very specific reason. Sandra had both. She also told me that Detective Anaya had confirmed the compound in the glass. Legal sedative. No intent to permanently harm, but still a crime. Gloria had already been advised to get her own lawyer. She had. She was cooperating fully with the investigation. She had turned over photographs she had quietly taken of 2 of the letters, which she had done on her own phone without anyone asking her to, because, as she put it, she had not known what else to do with what she found. Those photographs were now evidence. Sandra told me that Gloria's testimony, combined with what the phone records were likely to show, would make it very difficult for anyone to argue that I'd acted with intent. The glass switch was caught on our kitchen camera, but so was everything else. 3 days after Valentine's Day, I walked back into Lenora's hospital room. She was sitting up. The 4 was out. She had asked for real food and been given soup, which she was regarding with deep personal disappointment. She looked up when I came through the door. I pulled a chair to the side of her bed, and I sat down, and I did not say anything for a moment. Just looked at her. Derek has been writing to you, I said. She did not flinch. She put down the soup spoon. She folded her hands in her lap, the same way she always did when she was about to say something real. Yes, she said. How long? For months. And the last letter, the one where he talked about the records in my safe. A pause. You found it. Gloria found it. What did you mean when you wrote I will? She looked at me for a long time. The machine beside her beeped softly. Outside the window, the sky was that pale February gray that makes everything feel a little more serious than it is. Calvin, she said, and her voice was the quiet one, the real one, the one I had heard maybe 50 times in 11 years of marriage. I wrote I will because I was going to call Patricia. Patricia was our family lawyer, the one who had handled our will, our property agreements, everything personal. I was not going to remove anything from that safe, Lenora said. I was never going to do that. Do you know me at all? Her jaw was tight. I wrote I will because I was going to handle it myself. I was collecting the letters. I was documenting everything. I had 4 of them saved in a folder on my laptop. I was going to take it all to Patricia after the deal closed and let her advise us on how to respond to Derek legally. I did not want to bring it to you during the merger. You were protecting me, I said. From your own brother, she said. Yes. I was protecting you from your own brother during the most important deal of your career because I did not think you needed to be managing Derek's ego and $100 million land closing at the same time. She picked up the soup spoon again. Set it down. I'm not going to apologize for that. The room was quiet for a long time. I reached over and took her hand. She let me. I know, I said, and I did. I knew it the same way I had known it at the dinner table. The way you know something in your bones before your brain catches up. I'm not going to tell you everything resolved cleanly and quickly. Real life does not work that way, and neither does a story worth telling. Here is what actually happened. Gloria was charged with administering a harmful substance. Her lawyer negotiated carefully. She had no prior record. She had cooperated completely. She had genuine remorse and genuine evidence that her intent, however wrong, had been protective rather than malicious. She received probation. No prison time. She called me the day after sentencing and said only that she was sorry. I told her I believed her. I'm in it. Derek's legal challenge never made it to court. Sandra and Patricia between them constructed a response so complete and so airtight that the lawyer in Houston withdrew within 2 weeks of receiving it. The original paperwork was clean. The state transfer was binding. The language in paragraph 9 meant exactly what it said and nothing more. Derek called me on a Wednesday night, 4 weeks after Valentine's Day. He said he hoped we could get past it. I told him I needed time. That was the most honest thing I had said to him in years. I still have not decided how much time I need. Detective Anaya called me on a Thursday morning. She told me I was no longer a person of interest in the investigation. She said it in a tone that was professional and even and did not include anything resembling an apology. But at the end of the call, right before she hung up, she said, "For what it's worth, Mr. Briggs, I believed you from the second day." I said, "Thank you, detective." She said, "Take care of yourself." And she hung up. And I sat in my truck in the parking lot of the hardware store where I had been picking up supplies for a job site, and I just breathed for a minute. Lenora came home on a Sunday. She walked through the front door of our house, looked around at everything the way you look at something after you have been away long enough to miss it, and then she walked straight to the dining room and stood in front of the table where those candles had been. She stood there a long moment. I stood in the doorway watching her. "I want to get rid of that table," she said finally. "Okay," I said. She turned around. "And I want to take that trip. Not Portugal. Somewhere I have never been. Somewhere neither of us has any memories of yet. Wherever you want," I said. She looked at me with the expression she had when she thought I was going to say something she already knew. "You believed me," she said, "the whole time, even with everything Gloria found, even with those letters. You believed me. You are the woman I built $100 million with," I said. "I'm not going to stop believing you because your handwriting showed up in a margin." She almost smiled. Not quite. Then she did. The real kind, the kind that starts slow and then takes over her whole face, and she walked across the room, and she put her arms around me. And I held on to her like the ground was still uncertain under my feet because honestly, it was not because of her. Because of what the whole week had shown me about how fast everything you think you know can look completely different from a different angle. I have thought about that a lot in the months since it happened. About how Gloria, who loved nothing about our house except the peace she thought she was keeping in it, had made an enormous and dangerous mistake from a place of genuine care. About how Derek, who I grew up with and pushed on his bicycle and drove to college, had let jealousy turn into something legal and cold. About how Lenora, the woman I have shared a bed with for 11 years, had carried a secret for 4 months to protect me, and I had never once noticed the weight of it on her. We are not perfect. None of us in this story were. But here's what I know to be true. The night I switched those glasses, I did not know what was in either of them. I acted on 4 words from a woman I trusted because something in me said trust them. And that instinct, as confused and imperfect as everything around it was, turned out to be the right move. Sometimes that is all you have. A whisper, a gut feeling, a choice made in a single second. We booked the trip to Iceland 2 weeks after Lenora came home. Neither of us had ever been. No memories attached to any of it. Just cold air and green lights in the sky and hot springs that steam in the middle of winter. She cried at the northern lights. Not sad crying, The other kind. The kind that comes when something is so beautiful it gets past every wall you have built. I stood next to her and did not say anything because some moments do not need words. They just need you to show up and stand in them. That is what I've tried to do. In business. In marriage. In this whole improbable life. I want to tell you something about the safe. The one in my home office that Derek had told Lenora to empty. The one that held the original contract documents. I opened it the morning after Lenora came home, just to look. The documents were all there. Every single one. Perfectly organized in the green folder Sandra had helped me set up years ago. Untouched, exactly as I had left them. I stood there looking at them for a while. Then I closed the safe, reset the combination to something new, told Lenora the new one. And that was that. People ask me sometimes, now that enough time has passed, that this story has started to feel like something that happened rather than something happening. They ask me what I learned from it. And I always have to think about that for a minute, because there is not one clean lesson. Life rarely works that way. What I learned about money is that it changes the temperature of every relationship around it. It does not create problems. It heats up the ones that were already there. What I learned about trust is that it is not a feeling. It is a decision you make every day with incomplete information. What I learned about marriage is that the person across from you at the dinner table is keeping things you do not know about. Not because they are hiding from you, because they're trying to carry some of the weight so you do not have to carry all of it. And the question is not whether they are keeping things. The question is why. What I learned about family is that love and loyalty are not the same thing. My brother loved me in his way. But when it came to a choice between loyalty and $30 million, he made his choice. And I've had to make mine about what that means going forward. What I learned about Gloria is harder to put into words. She made a serious mistake, an illegal one that put my wife in a hospital bed and put me in a living room answering questions from a detective at 10 o'clock at night. And she made it because she was trying to protect a man who had never given her a reason not to. I do not understand it completely. I do not think I am supposed to, but I do not think she was a bad person. I think she was a good person who made a terrible decision from a place that was not entirely wrong. That is the most honest thing I can say about it. 6 months after Valentine's Day, I was at a job site in North Austin. New commercial property, mixed use, the kind of project that keeps 60 people employed for 18 months. I was walking the perimeter in the morning before the crews arrived, just checking everything the way I always do, coffee in hand, the whole job site quiet in that specific way it gets before the day starts and the noise begins. And I looked at this big, open piece of ground that was about to become something, and I thought about all the deals I had made, all the risks I had taken, all the mornings like this one that had led here. And I felt something settle. Not relief exactly. Not happiness the way it sounds in movies. Something quieter than that. Something more like the feeling you get after a very long storm when the rain finally stops and everything is wet and still and you step outside and breathe and the air is completely clean. That is what it felt like. Like the air had cleared. Like I could see the edges of things again. I called Lenora from that job site. She answered on the second ring the way she always did. I said, "I just wanted to hear your voice." She was quiet for a second. Then she said, "You are so weird." And she laughed. And I laughed. And the job site around me started to wake up. The first trucks pulling in, the first voices calling across the gravel, the whole machinery of a working day beginning to move. And I stood there in the middle of it, and I was, without any drama or announcement, completely fine. This has been Calvin Briggs's story. The glass, the dinner, the whisper, and the woman who was protecting me the whole time without ever once asking me to notice. I want to say one more thing before we wrap this up, because I think about the moment at that dinner table a lot. Not the fear of it, not the confusion of it, but the specific second when Gloria leaned toward me and said those 4 words. "Switch the glasses. Now." And I did it, without knowing why, without knowing what was in them, without any information at all beyond 4 words from a woman I had known for less than a year. I have asked myself many times why I trusted her in that moment. And the honest answer is I do not fully know. Maybe it was the way she said it. That steadiness in her voice, even as she was whispering. Maybe it was something in my gut that had been paying attention to things I was not consciously tracking. Maybe it was just luck wearing the costume of instinct. But I acted, and acting mattered. And that is what I want to leave you with. Not some big dramatic lesson about marriage or money or betrayal. Just this. When something in you says, pay attention, pay attention. When someone you have reason to trust takes a risk to reach you, let yourself be reached. Because the people who try to warn you do not always get the words right. They do not always do it perfectly. Gloria did not do it perfectly by a long shot, but she tried in a messy, imperfect, complicated way that real people try to do right by other real people. And sometimes that imperfect try is the only thing standing between you and something much worse. So ask the questions before you dismiss the whisper. Look a little longer before you assume. And if someone across the table raises a glass and says to us, maybe, just maybe, make sure you both know what is in it first. To all the dads out there building something, protecting something, loving something with everything you have got, this one is for you. The story is messy. The people in it are flawed. The ending is not about tied perfectly around a box, but it is real, and it is ours, and we're still standing in it. Lenora is in the kitchen right now arguing with our new coffee machine, which she insisted on buying and now has complicated feelings about. I can hear her through the wall. That sound, that completely ordinary, unremarkable, infuriating, beautiful sound is what $100 million actually buys you if you are lucky. Not the machine, not the kitchen, not the house, or the Iceland trip, or the table we finally got rid of. Just the sound of the person you love being alive in the next room and annoyed at something small. That is it. That is the whole thing. If you made it to the end of this story, I am genuinely grateful. Hit the like button if it moves something in you. Subscribe to Daddy's Revenge for more real, raw, and family-centered stories that remind us what actually matters. And as always, thank you for being a part of this family right here. We will see you in the next one.